Welcome into the Big Chief Show. Welcome in. Happy Hump Day, everybody. This is the Big Chief Show on Chief Studios. I'm Fred Davis. That's the boy. That's the guy. That's the man, the myth, the legend. Better Mike Babbo, Raider extraordinaire. He's got a brand new hat on because after you go 2-0 with a new coach, it's only right that you get a new lid. It's rally cap time for the Raiders. And we're going to touch on the Raiders here in a little bit, obviously. Because we're going to ask Bitter Mike, look, it's been all, rainbows and unicorns against two of the worst offenses in all of football. But now, my friend, is where the rubber meets the proverbial road. And we're going to find out just how bout it and just how SoCal, our boy, Antonio Pierce is when they play a real offense this Sunday.
Yeah, look, now where it starts to get really meaty. They travel to Miami. I think the only good thing about traveling to Miami in November is that they're not doing it in September where it's still sticky, hot, and humid. But, there's no question that they're going to face one of the top 10, one of the top offenses in the league. They have, like you talked about this last week, Freddie D, they got two number one wide receivers, not just one. Devon A-Chain comes back from being on the IR, even though he practiced in a limited fashion. So did Raheem Mostert, but still, they've got an excellent set of running backs there. And so Antonio Pierce's boys are going to have their hands full. But look, again, it's about playing with pride, playing with passion, and playing with some hope. And I think the most hopeful thing, and the thing that Raiders fans and Raider Nation have not had in a long time, is the sense that they can beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. And they proved that in the last 2 weeks. Now, the other thing that they can prove is that they can hang with the teams they may not be able to beat, or the teams that are a lot more talented than them. We are going to find that out in the next 2 weeks because, again, after facing the Dolphins in South Florida, they travel home and they face the Kansas City Chiefs. The 7-2 Kansas City Chiefs, who, like we talked about, are the class of the AFC. Let's call it what it is.
No question.
After what we saw with the Bills and the Bengals blowing leads, after what we saw with the Baltimore Ravens, who we thought were the best team in the NFL, blowing a 17-3 lead to a depleted Browns team and an injured Deshaun Watson, who we now know is out for the rest of the season. The Chiefs, like I said, are in the driver's seat, and they have a pretty winnable schedule out. They do have a couple of tough games, but again, those two tough games are against Cincinnati and Buffalo, both at Arrowhead. So, and
you got the game at the Chargers too. So you got, I would.
I'm not worried about the Chargers if I was a Chiefs fan. Because their defense is disgusting.
I would be only because of the fact that A, it's the very end of the season, and B, you could have a Charger team that A is playing for its coach. You could have a team that's playing for its playoff lives, and look, as well as anybody, we can say what we want about the Chargers, in that look, they always find a way to screw things up, but they are a tough out. Right? Look, they gave the Lions everything they could give. And the thing about the Chargers is they're one of those teams, too, that sometimes they do find a way to win games. And it's, what Charger team are you going to get? Because that's the frustrating part if you're a Charger fan, because the Chargers can go out and beat a Lions team, a Chiefs team, a 49ers, or who, insert top team here, and then turn around the next week and lose to
the Cardinals,
Tennessee Titans, exactly. The Cardinals, you know what I'm saying? So
that's, exactly.
Divisional opponent too, right? Mm-hmm. So and so I look at this Chiefs team. Look, you've got the Eagles coming straight out the bye. Now, of course, it's going to be a pretty evenly matched game, which I feel good about because there's going to be they were off a bye. One team wasn't. They're both coming off byes. So you've got two teams that are going to be as well prepared and as healthy as they're going to be in the second half of the season. So I'm looking forward to that. But to your point, Mike, excuse me, week 10, I will say this, and you mentioned Deshaun Watson. The big news came out this morning that he's got a shoulder injury, like a broken bone or something like that in his shoulder, so he's done for the year. Which, if you're a Cleveland fan, it's you can't win for losing. Here you finally had a situation, Babbo, where You had your defense is a top. That's a Super Bowl caliber defense.
It's the number one defense in the league.
Okay, that's a Super Bowl caliber defense. You've got great pass rushers. You've got good linebackers. You've got a good secondary. You've got Jim Schwartz, who, for my money, is as good a D line, or excuse me, as good a D coordinator as there is in National Football League. And it's funny though, because I don't know if how closely you watched that second half of the Ravens and Cleveland game. I know you and I were texting throughout the course of the day Sunday, but if you go back to that second half and you look at the way Deshaun was throwing the football, I remember saying to myself when I was watching, I was like, man, I said something about, like, he was kind of like later in the way he was throwing it. Exactly. That's it. He didn't look right. And look, I get it. He's caught flack all season. You're going to catch flack when you've got a $230 million contract and you've got the skeletons in the closet that we all know that he does. But look, at the end of the day, the guy's paid his penance. All right. He's back. He's doing, for all intents and purposes, for everything we know, Mike, he's been a good citizen in Cleveland. Okay.
Yeah.
And just from a Cleveland Browns perspective, you feel bad because it's like, man, here was a team that looked like they were finally on the cusp, Mike, of turning that corner. And now you're left with PJ Walker, God bless him, who we know what he is. And now you're going to a rookie who's going to start on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, look at the injuries that they've had in their running back core, of course, too, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly. You did all this on the heels of losing one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the National Football League.
Right, exactly. And so they can't win for losing. I mean, it seems, just like you said, Freddie, it seems like they finally turned the corner and got rid of the ghost of Freddie Kitchens, which was such a disaster. Another Bill Belichick. No, he was a Bill Parcells disciple, but either way. And so they finally got a coach in Kevin Stefanski who is building up that roster. And this happens. In credit to Deshaun Watson for gutting out one hell of a performance. And he threw, 40-yard touchdown. Yeah, he sure. A 40-yard touchdown pass to ODBJ. And then, of course, a 10-yard touchdown pass to Elijah Moore. He kept them in the game. And of course, the Browns defense, forcing two turnovers. I think two interceptions by Lamar Jackson. Of course, the big one was the pick 6 by Greg Newsome, who wasn't even supposed to be playing that game, if I remember correctly. He was.
By the way, had a rough day before that interception, because if you remember that possession prior to that, or I think it was a couple of days before that, where you had the Baltimore, who seemed like, every time they were getting ready to either get forced to punt or kick a field goal, there was a holding penalty. By the way, are we at a stage where is it time to take the defensive holding penalty? And look, I'm all for the 5 yards, but do we have to give them an automatic first down?
Automatic first down? It's ridiculous. Not just that, Freddie D. I mean, they really need to do something about the spot foul for the pass interference. Because if you're 3rd and 20, and if I'm, if you're a Chiefs fan, I'm a Raiders fan, our team is on defense, it's 3rd and 25, you're thinking, don't do anything stupid. And all the offense has to do is throw it deep and hope for a penalty. Because Bo Schembechler used to say it himself. It's like when you pass the ball, three things happen, 2 of them are bad. Now you say 2 of them are good if you're in the offense, because you could get an offensive pass interference. And these days they're calling pass interference on frickin' anything.
No, I'll tell you what,
they had an offensive. Yeah, they had an offensive pass interference on a phantom pick play against the Steelers last weekend. So it's just like they just need to eat the flags.
Your boy Kenny Pickett's taking a lot of shit right now, too, by the way.
What's that? Who's that?
Your boy Kenny Pickett's taking a lot of shit right now.
Yeah, you know what though? Screw them, because they don't know the fact that he has thrown 149 passes without an interception.
Well, yeah. When they don't go. Well, I hate to say it, but I saw the breakdown of his passing today. I mean, the ball doesn't travel more than 10 yards.
Doesn't matter. They're 6-3, right? Hey, they're winning. I mean, do you want to chuck the rock like Brett Favre? Or do you want to win? Do you want to be like like Josh Allen?
Well, that's a great segue. That is a great segue, because Ken Dorsey gets the boot Tuesday morning, which you and I both agreed that we thought he was kind of the sacrificial lamb for that. You know who doesn't? think he was the sacrificial lamb, and is A-okay with him being kicked to the curb?
His former boss, Sean McDermott.
Well, that's one. Think Buffalo Bill royalty.
Oh, Jim Kelly?
Not quite. Not quite.
My man. O.J. Orenthal James Simpson Jr. I saw it. Yep. Yeah.
I have tried in vain to get O.J. Simpson on this show. I have tried in vain for probably the last 6 or 7 years to get O.J. Simpson on a radio show and or our YouTube show. I will say this again, and look, I'm a huge fan of O.J. Simpson, relationship guy notwithstanding. I may not take
not a huge fan of what he does and what he did.
I may not take his marital advice, okay? I probably wouldn't do that. But legal advice, maybe.
Football advice.
Football and legal advice? Is there a better guy out there than O.J. or Orenthal James Simpson?
No.
I'm not sure. I'm really not, okay? But OJ made a great point, okay? And look, people can laugh all they want, and I would challenge anybody to go check out OJ's Twitter feed and give him a follow on Twitter, because I'll tell you what, and you and I have talked about this time and time again, and I've said this for years. When you listen to the way OJ breaks down football, dollars to donuts, OJ's today as good as anybody out there when it comes to talking football. That being said, he made a great point. He said, look, he didn't have a problem with Ken Dorsey. He said the plays he's calling he didn't like. He said, and if you look at the fact that you've got a stable of running backs, he goes, why is it? And he made this kind of sold me on it. He goes, why is Singletary balling over in Houston, but we shipped him off in Buffalo and said he was no good as a running back. You know, look at what James Cook has done in moments, but yet they don't give him the ball consistently. Okay. Right. He said, then you look at it, he goes, you've got all these times where they've got, short, third and short, fourth and short or whatever. And he goes, and they're running out of the shotgun. Right. He said, you got a 6'5", 250-pound quarterback and you can't line up under center. Now we get it. OJ's from a different era where, smash mouth football was the deal and that's how they did it. But it makes a lot of sense, right?
It sure does, Fred. I mean, because what is what's the moniker these days? What's the word these days? A tush push. It's like if it's fourth and short, I mean, hands down, you're lining up under center. You're getting a push from a fullback or the running back behind you, and you just just don't screw around, even on third down. I mean, what are you doing lining up in a shotgun? So he makes a lot of sense.
That being said, I'm going to go ahead and take this a step further. And I said this earlier in the year, and it was one of those deals where, and you watch football by yourself. And I'm sure there's guys like us have plenty of conversations with ourselves about stuff that since there's nobody else around. I think it's time for the Chiefs to stop with the cute gadget plays on third and fourth and short. Okay. I understand that 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, when you ran the sneak with Patrick and he had that freak deal where he dislocated his kneecap. Okay. How many quarterback sneaks have there been since where a quarterback has dislocated his kneecap? 0. Yeah. Okay. In fact, I'll take it one further for you, Mike Babbo. How many injuries do you know of that have occurred because of a quarterback push or a quarterback sneak since that happened 4 or 5 years ago? I don't know of any. Okay. None of any significance. So my point in all that is that Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, the offensive staff, I think it's time that we chill with the whole, well, we can't run a quarterback sneak. It's not like you're running 10 quarterback sneaks a fucking game anyway, for Christ's sake, okay? Put Mahomes, who, oh, by the way, is 6'3", 230 pounds, okay, and as you've watched, can maneuver around pretty dadgum well. He's run more than he's ever run. Even if you don't run the sneak, what, you don't think the Chiefs could do a tush push? Are we saying to ourselves that we don't think the Chiefs, with all the offensive minds they got on that staff, couldn't figure out how to run a fucking tush push?
I mean, yeah.
I don't want to
see back behind you or Noah Gray back
anybody.
behind. Right.
I'm tired of seeing Blake Bell under center. I'm tired of seeing Blake Bell under center. I'm tired of seeing Noah Gray under center. I'm tired of seeing Travis Kelce in the Wildcat.
They're not built for that. Listen, you
know what's going to happen. Not to mention, you know exactly what's going to happen when they do that shit.
And if you do gadget plays, Fred, that you're telling the other team we're not as talented as you, and we have to trick you to beat you.
We don't trust our personnel.
So stop with the screwing around. You line up on 3rd and short, 3rd and 1, hell, even 3rd and 2. Hell, I've seen some teams that are going freaking 45-year-old Tom Brady every single time.
That dude was money.
Huh?
Money.
Money. You knew it was coming, and they couldn't stop it.
Couldn't stop it.
And he's so bigger than
you could argue
Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, look, this guy. I mean, here's the thing. This guy's rushed for. I want to say he's on pace for his most rushing yards ever this season. But yet, a quarterback sneak with. Oh, by the way, which we have gone on record, and the Chiefs will go on record as saying have 3 of the best interior linemen in the NFL. So you've got a All-Pro in Creed Humphrey. You've got one of the best right guards in Trey Smith. You've got one of the best left guards in Joe Tooney. And yet we can't run a dadgum quarterback sneak or a tush push because we're still freaking out over a frickin' knee dislocation from 5 years ago. Come on, man. That's ridiculous.
We'll see what happens this weekend. I mean, it's a big game against
huge game. And you and I will talk about that more on Sunday. Let me ask you this real quick before we move on, because like I said, from an AFC standpoint, it was a very big weekend. We'll talk a little bit about what went down with the Ravens and kind of where things are at right now in the AFC. But before we do that, what was in the entire weekend of football? And I thought it was a good weekend of football. I really did. You had 5 walk-off field goals. CJ Stroud looked phenomenal once again. Houston folks, and I know you're in San Antonio. I'm in Houston. You're probably getting some of that residual CJ Stroud love over there as well. Was there anything that stuck out to you this weekend?
Really, I think the way that the Houston Texans came back from their own mistakes. Okay. I really like the way that CJ Stroud weathered the storm, especially in Cincinnati, which is a hard place to play. I was very, very surprised at how Denver played on Monday night. I mean, Russell Wilson's looking like his old self. He's taking care of the football. Once again, no interceptions, no fumbles, and they really took it to the Bills, and they took advantage of the Bills' mistakes. The Bills continue to shoot themselves in the foot, and it's just extremely frustrating. I also liked how Kyler Murray came back from essentially being a year out in the same location where he tore up his knee. And let's face it, I understand that these guys are world-class athletes, but there's still a lot of doubt. There's still some doubt in there the first time they step on the field, Freddie D, from such a horrific knee injury. So
speaking of doubt,
what's that?
Speaking of doubt.
Yep.
Speaking of doubt, of the 2 people that are on the show right now, who was the guy that had no doubt that the Denver Broncos would be victorious?
My man, Freddie D. He called the upset. I thought that the Bills are going to win in a squeaker only because they play so well at home, but they really just shit all over themselves. They just beat themselves. I mean, and it was just the icing on the cake for them for the Broncos kicker to miss. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name, but for him to miss the 41-yard field goal as time expired to win the game.
The former Saints.
We thought sealing the victory for Buffalo, only for them to have not offsides, not leverage, 12 men on the field, which is inexcusable to me, Freddie D. I mean,
plus you knew they were going to kick.
Yeah, you knew they were going to kick, and I think you even had a timeout left in your back pocket. Where you could set it up.
Because they had run like 2 or 3 kneel downs or whatever it was, and so I'm with you. How that even is allowed to happen. Let's see, real quick. By the way, let's see picks from over the weekend. You and I, let's see, we both picked Pittsburgh, so we were right on that. Let's see, you picked San Francisco, I picked Jacksonville, so that's one. Let's see, hold on.
Yeah, I picked San Francisco in a squeaker. That was not a squeaker. Holy smokes.
Okay, man. So you and I both, so I was wrong on that one. You and I both picked Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I
picked the Texans.
You picked you did.
Mm-hmm.
You did. And now, okay, so I fucked up, and I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a 0 on this because I did pick Houston to cover the spread.
Right.
I did pick them to cover the spread, but I picked Cincinnati to kick the field. I mean, we almost got it right. We
said it was going to come down to who had the ball last, and that was true, right? And Houston had the ball last.
They did. Yeah. And if Tyler Boyd catches that pass in the end zone, maybe maybe it's a
different conversation. And, he was inconsolable on the sidelines at the end of that game.
Well, what's he gonna do? I mean,
what else is he gonna do?
Game up. Baltimore, you and I were both wrong on that.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I want to say, and then you and I both picked. The Raiders.
Yes.
So okay, so you were 4-2, and I was 3-3.
Okay, fair enough.
Oh,
can't wait for Sunday then.
Not too shabby. On to the next. On to the next. My surprise this week, I would have to say, would have to be Cleveland and the way they came back. And then, of course, turn around and have them. I mean, look, man, they were down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, and you had the whole haircut, and it was just the whole, here goes Cleveland again. And that was a game that you felt like they were going to lose, and it looked like they were going to lose. But, of course, they turn around, they win the game, and then, of course, we find out 48 hours later that they're done for the season. Or, excuse me, Deshaun Watson's done for the season, which makes you wonder if the Cleveland Browns will be done for the season. So that was a surprise. Kyler Murray playing well. That was also nice to see. You wonder what they're going to do at quarterback. I mean, look, he looked better, and I can't remember who said it. He looked better throwing the ball Sunday than he did at any time last year, or at least for the most of the year. One other thing I'm going to say too, and I said this on Twitter today, or I said it, I don't remember. It was on Twitter today. So this guy on Twitter tweets out about how, what team was it? Dadgummit. Anyway, he mentioned something about how a team could go get Cleveland. That Cleveland could go get Josh Dobbs and they'd be a Super Bowl contender. And everybody's like, I said, can we look? I love the Josh Dobbs story. Okay, I do. It's fantastic. Look, the guy's been with 7 or 8 teams already in the NFL in 6 years or whatever it's been. But let's pump the brakes just a smidge. Yeah. For one, it's not an accident that he's bounced around 7 teams. Okay, that's not an accident. All right. 2, he started off like gangbusters with Arizona. And then once defenses kind of figured out, he's Josh Dobbs, and then he went back to being Josh Dobbs again, which is why he got traded to frickin' Minnesota.
For a conditional 7th-round pick.
Okay? Now, you could make the argument that sometimes, and look, this, Mike, and talk to any professional athlete, they'll tell you it's a lot about the situation. All right? Our boy Gannon in Arizona, defensive-minded guy, whereas with Kevin O'Connell, who's an offensive-minded guy and has had some great quarterback experiences and coaching in the last half decade or decade of his coaching career, and let's not forget, that's a pretty good offense they've got in Minnesota, and that defense has finally started to turn things around a little bit too. So, look, I'm not ready to say, to me, the jury's still out on Josh Dobbs. If he continues to play great and hey, all of a sudden this guy's a bona fide starter, and all of a sudden Minnesota finds itself in a situation where, okay, maybe we found a guy post Kirk Cousins, because the one thing about Josh Dobbs can run the ball, right? That's the one aspect that he gives you that Kirk Cousins, as we all know, never gives you. And, no disrespect to him, he's just a pocket guy. But let's, again, 2 wins. One's against the Saints, who they're the Saints. And then I can't remember, I don't know who they won or who they beat the week before.
The Falcons. They beat the Falcons. In Falcons.
Okay.
After, I think it was Jalen Hill. What was the guy? Yeah, Jaron Hall, excuse me. He was the starter at the time, and he got hurt.
He got knocked out with a concussion. That's right.
He got knocked out with a concussion, and then Dobbs comes in. But listen, You're right. I mean, it's just 2 games. Let's ease up a little bit.
Let's not start sucking each other's dicks just yet. Okay.
Right. But you know what? They've got a hell of a test. They're going to Mile High Stadium. They're playing the rejuvenated Denver Broncos, who have now won 3 in a row, I believe. That defense is playing nasty.
Let's put some respect on Vance Joseph's name, too.
Let's put some respect on Vance Joseph. This guy has rejuvenated his stock in being a head coach again. So we'll see what happens. And then, you know what? If he keeps this up, I mean, listen, after getting hung a 70 burger in week 3, they have just really shored some stuff up. He changed the schemes a bit, changed the personnel, and they're playing they're playing lights out defensively. Now, again, we'll see. Looking at their schedule, they've got the Chicago Bears at home after Denver. Game. Then they have a bye. Then they travel to Vegas to play the Raiders. The thing is that they still got to play the Lions. They haven't played the Lions yet. They play them in week 16 and in week 18.
Wait a minute, what? They play the Lions in week 16 and 18?
Yeah, they haven't played them yet.
Well, no, but they can't play them twice. Oh, you're talking about Minnesota. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Denver. My bad.
No. I'm talking about Minnesota.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. Minnesota still has to play the Lions twice. Yeah, no. You're right. And that will tell the tale. But like I said, we've still got a handful of weeks left before we figure out, whether Josh Dobbs is the real. And look, as we know in sports, it's a great story right now. We love a good underdog story. We love the fact that the guy has no eyebrows. We love the fact that he's, trying to be a astronaut, whatever, Well,
yeah. So, I mean, that's another thing too. This kid's pretty smart. So he read the playbook and memorized.
He's a rocket scientist, isn't he?
He literally is. I think he is. But he read the playbook in like 2 days. He didn't even have a chance to work out with the team before he got thrown into the fire in the second half of that game against Atlanta. So kudos to him. But let's see what happens when he faces some real competition.
Although I do think it, and not to take anything away from him, but I mean I'm going to. I think it also shows that in the NFL, I've heard time and time again that everybody runs the same plays. They just call it different things. Different terminology. Yeah, hating a little bit, but whatever. All right, the changing the changing AFC landscape. Chiefs are still in the driver's seat right now. They're sitting at 7-2, and then of course, I think the biggest takeaway from this past weekend, outside of the fact that that Cleveland's pretty much screwed, is the fact that the Baltimore Ravens and I was talking with our friend Henry Thomas on Sunday. And I said this in the first half, and I think maybe even you and I have talked about this, is, look, Sunday was quintessential Baltimore Raven football in the last 5 to 6 years, where, look, when the run game's on, they're tough to beat. All right. When the offense is humming and they can mix in the run and the pass, hey, that's a scary team. But I would make the argument that, in the NFL and football in general, any football team's good when you can, run and pass. When you shut down the run, though, with Baltimore and you make Lamar Jackson have to be a passer is when things start to go awry. And this is not let's hate on Lamar Jackson. This is a reality. I mean, look at what he did in the fourth quarter. He was rushed and he had to make throws. And that's where, when you have a very kind of spotty, receiver room. Okay, look, Odell Beckham is damn near my age at this point. Okay, he's good for about 1 or 2 catches a game, and that's about it. Like, New York Giants, Odell is not walking through that door. In fact, I'd be hard pressed to think that even late Los Angeles Rams ODB is walking through that door anytime soon. So to me, that's going to still be the Achilles heel and the question mark. And on top of that, the Baltimore defense didn't look great in that second half. I mean, Deshaun, with a busted shoulder, went 14 of 14 for 150 yards, and they had no problem moving the ball down the field when they needed to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the Baltimore defense a pass because they did allow 2 touchdowns, but or 3, but one of them was that pick 6. And in the second half, it just seemed like the the Ravens just went away from the run game. I mean, when you split 15, 16 carries amongst, Edwards and Keon Mitchell and Justice Hill, Edwards had only 11 carries the entire game. And this is a guy
I was going to say, he did not get a lot of touches this game.
No, not at all. And this is a guy who scored 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games previous. So you've got to give time. You've got to give the running game some time to open up some holes and just keep on pounding that rock into that wall, and eventually you'll break through that wall. But it seemed to me like you said, they relied too much on Lamar. Lamar did have 8 rushes himself for 41 yards. But if you rely on him on the pass, and you could take a look at the splits, his quarterback rating when either behind by 7 points or ahead by like 3 points, it takes a dip. When he's left to win a ball game, he's not nearly as productive as when when they're playing from ahead. So, I don't know. I don't know what the rest of the season holds for these guys, but I really think that Baltimore's got a kind of a decent schedule ahead of them. They're playing Cincinnati tomorrow, so we're going to find out who is going to be the class of the AFC North in that game. I've thrown a lot of love on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we all laugh about it and stuff. But I think one of the reasons is because their schedule is so doggone easy. But on a head-to-head matchup, I don't think they can match up with Baltimore. And they face each other in the last game of the season. But after the Bengals, they got the Chargers in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, I think the Chargers are just an absolute mess, and they're not going to be able to score against that number 1 defense in Baltimore. Then they travel home and face the Rams. Who knows what's going to happen with Matt Stafford's finally coming back this week. Then they have that's after a bye. Then they play Jacksonville, who's got a very, very inconsistent offense. They got a decent defense, but inconsistent. There are 2 tough games, I think, are at San Francisco in Week 16 and then at home against Miami. So, but I think the rest of their schedule is relatively easier than, let's say, the Bengals. Or certainly the Bills. The Bills' schedule is definitely the hardest.
Well, that all changes Cincinnati has to win tomorrow.
If they don't, they're 500, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, Cincinnati cannot afford to go to 5-5 tomorrow. They just can't. I mean, they're 1-4 in the division, right? Or excuse me, they're 1-4 in the conference right now. So Cincinnati is playing literally for their playoff lives tomorrow, because there's just, like you said, there's too much that's going to happen in the last 6-7 weeks of the season. So Cincinnati, with that horrific start once again, but of course, they ripped off 7 or 8, 9 wins in a row last year. Losing to Houston on Sunday was a devastating loss, and you hate to have to play a division game that quick on a turnaround on a Thursday, especially after. I mean, because let's call it what and I don't know about you, Mike, but I'm curious to watch this game tomorrow. Not just because it's great; it's going to be a great game between 2 divisional teams that have aspirations for Super Bowls, but they both played a knockout, drag-out game on Sunday. Like, it wasn't like they were able to rest starters in the 4th quarter, or the game was in hand late in the 3rd, early in the 4th, and they were kind of on cruise control. Like, both of those games literally went down to the final second. So you were talking about a physically and emotionally draining and taxing game. So it'll be interesting to see tomorrow what kind of football we see from these 2 teams who, again, Baltimore can survive if they lose, but Cincy, no, it's must-win territory.
Well, not just that, Freddie. I mean, like you said, this could be emotionally devastating for them. Not just, of course, their playoff hopes for Cincinnati. Both teams lost in spectacular fashion after having a double-digit lead in each of their games, right? And Cincinnati blew 2 10-point leads to the Houston Texans, whereas Baltimore, they jumped out to a 17-3 lead in the first half and then just sputtered after that. So whoever loses this game is really going to be pissed off going into their Week 12 matchup. So, like you said, it's a must-win for both teams, but definitely this is critical for Cincinnati to come out firing, and it's not going to be easy for them because they're going into Baltimore, and Baltimore is going to be very upset. Their fans are going to be very upset, after blowing such a big lead to Cleveland. So we'll see what happens. But the other thing too, Freddie, is that, and I read this as stat earlier today, the difference between the number 4 ranked team in the AFC and the number 11 ranked team in the AFC is 1 game.
I believe it.
You got tons of teams that are sitting at either 6-3, 5-4, or 4-5. The Raiders right in the middle are 5-5. They're back in the playoff mode.
The AFC, this reminds me, and you probably remember a little bit better than I do, but this reminds me back in the day in the 90s, 80s and 90s, when the NFC was just beating the shit out of the AFC year after year after. It was like, 16 years in a row when the NFC won the Super Bowl?
There was like 16, 17. The last AFC team to win the Super Bowl before the Broncos did it was the Los Angeles Raiders in 1983 when they wiped out the Washington Redskins, 38-9. After that, it was the NFC dominance for 18 seasons in a row. We could look it up, but
you had 2 dynasties during that run too. You had San Francisco and Dallas.
During
that time. You could argue you had an AFC dynasty if losing 4 Super Bowls in a row. Because let's call it what it was. That is a dynasty, right? Let's be real, and that just goes to show how much different things might have been if Scott Norwood isn't wide right.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of sports. All right, real quick, we'll put this up. We'll mention this real quick, and then we're gonna get into our top 5 coaching hot seat rankings. But the one thing that really kind of and I guess it kind of goes back to what we were asking earlier about what was the surprise from the weekend, is that when you look at the Bengals, when you look at the Bills, hell, when you even look at the Ravens, okay, and you look at these teams that have been perennial AFC contenders for the last half decade. Obviously the Patriots have fallen off a cliff, and are that's a whole nother conversation. We'll save that for another show. But it just gives you a whole new appreciation, or at least it gives you a sustained appreciation for the fact that right now, look, Cincinnati, as we already alluded to, is a game away from total chaos. Buffalo is in total chaos. Yeah. Baltimore is got a great quarterback who we still all have question marks as to whether or not he can actually win a game with his arm, right, where he has to throw the ball 50 times. Meanwhile, if Pat Mahomes has to throw the ball 50 times, it's troublesome, but you feel okay.
I feel great about it. You kidding me?
Well, you do, but you don't, right? Because that just tells me that, if Pat Mahomes is throwing the ball 50 times, it's like, okay, A, why aren't we running the ball? And B, obviously we're in a shootout. But to your point, there ain't many quarterbacks that if you did have to throw the ball 50 times, you could do a lot worse than Pat Mahomes, okay? He's got the worst receiving core in the National Football League, okay? Hands down. Look, Noah Brown. All right, Noah Brown, who outside of the Noah Brown family and deep 17-team fantasy rosters and the most diehard Texan fans over the last 2 weeks, nobody knew. How many black dudes do you know even named Noah? Let's start with that. Okay, how many bros do you know named Noah? I'll hang up and listen. Okay,
Noah, who built the ark, I'll bet you he was a brother.
At least Middle Eastern. At the very least Middle Eastern.
Hey, come on.
Hands down, right? So not since the Ark have we seen a brother from another mother named Noah, okay? Now, I'll tell you what.
You're going to make me Google famous Noahs. God damn it.
Well, you absolutely should. Look, we're at the point now where, Noah Brown is in rarefied air in Houston Texans lore. The only other 2 receivers to have back-to-back 150-yard games for the Houston Texans besides Noah Brown? Don't think too hard. You already know the names. The only 2 receivers you can think of when you think of the Texans.
Andre Johnson, for one.
And?
D-Hop.
There you go. Show him what he's won. So those are the think of that. And look, not only are those 2 Texan legends, but those are 2 great wide receivers just in the pantheon of NFL wide receivers, right? So that's what this guy's been able to join with his exploits over the last 2 weeks. So my point in all that is that, you got the Texans who are finding diamonds in the rough in Noah Brown. Nico Collins has had himself a pretty dadgum good season so far. Tank Dell is already better than Sky Moore. Yeah. All right. And we've talked about Sky Moore more than he needs to be talked about. So it's amazing when you think about what this team is able to do, sitting at 7-2, and when you look at their losses, they're 2 drop balls away from losing to the Detroit Lions, and they lost to a Denver team that, look, they 5 turnovers. I don't care who you are, 5 turnovers, and they were still in it till the very end. So for what the Chiefs are doing, they're number 1 in the AFC, and barring some major collapse, they're going to be 1 or 2 when it's all said and done. So it's amazing what Andy Reid's been able to do. And I'm going to take it one step further, and then we'll get into our hot seat rankings.
Yeah.
How many more years do you think he's got left, Andy Reid?
God, I mean, he's 65 years old.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he'll be 66 in March of next year. So he certainly has his wits about him. He certainly seems like he's enjoying it. I don't see any reason why he could. I mean, look, Bill Belichick's 72 years old. Now it all depends upon what he wants to do, right? But he certainly can play. He certainly can coach for the next 4 or 5 seasons. I don't think anyone's going to take that away from him. The only thing is that who's in the chair next to him? Who's going to be his replacement? So that's what he needs to do. He needs to groom his successor. Bill Walsh did it, and certainly Bill Parcells did it. And
I hope it ain't Matt Nagy.
No, you don't want that.
The reason why I ask you that is because he's 70 wins away right now from Don Shula. Okay.
Oh, he can get that.
He absolutely. That's what I'm saying. I mean, think about it. He hasn't won fewer than 10 or 11, or excuse me, I think 11 or 12 games since Mahomes has been on board. Right?
As a matter of fact, the last time he didn't was 2014.
Okay, like what was that? Like a second or third year with the Chiefs?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Second year of the Chiefs, and the first year he went 11-5.
So in his last 6-7 years, he hasn't won fewer than double-digit games.
And not just that, he's never had, he hasn't had a losing season since his last year with Philadelphia. And you could say that team was already broken up in a train wreck by then.
We figure he's probably we figure, okay, he's probably good for at least another 5 wins, right? Because at the very least.
Sure.
Okay. Because it's 17. Okay. So they've played, there's 8 games left. We think the Chiefs let's just say the Chiefs go 6-2, which would put him at 13-4. Right. And then you figure probably another win, maybe 2 in the playoffs. Right. So you're thinking about another, 14, 15 wins. I mean, there's no reason to think that over the next 5 years, okay, this guy's, hell, if he wins 12 games.
We're counting playoff wins too.
I think they do, don't they?
I don't know.
I mean, let's just say
if that's the case, and it's hands down. It's hands down within the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Even if he just went 12 wins, which 12-5 for this Chiefs. I mean, it's not crazy to think the Chiefs can go 12-5. I mean, look how many 12-win seasons, 10, 11, 12-game win seasons that Brady had pretty much through 20 years.
And keep in mind, too, we have a 17th game on the schedule now.
And now we add a 17th game to the schedule. So, anywho, look, it's a good time to be a Kansas City Chiefs fan. All right, we're about to tell you who it's not a good time to be a fan of. With these teams that are struggle bussing mightily, and teams that me and Mike think could probably find themselves looking for a new head coach. You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. At number 5, I'm going to go ahead and just give you my top 5. You give me your top 5, and then we'll discuss. Okay. My number 5 is Brandon Staley. My number 4 is, which actually I'm going to go ahead and shoot this up to number 3. But my number 4 is going to be Ron Rivera. My number 3 is going to be Sean McDermott. My number 2 is going to be Arthur Smith. And my number 1 is going to be Frank Reich.
So in reverse order, I've got Sean McDermott.
Number 5?
Number 5. Number 4 is Brandon Staley. My number 3 is Mike Vrabel from Tennessee, but I'll give you a reason why as a qualifier.
Uh-oh.
Number 2 is Matt LaFleur of the Green Bay Packers. And number 1 is Ron Rivera.
Okay. So we have I'm sorry. Here, give me that list one more time.
Okay.
Number 5, you got McDermott.
Number 4, Brandon Staley.
Okay.
Number 3, Mike Vrabel.
That's an odd choice, but I'm anxious to hear the reason for that. Number 2,
Matt LaFleur.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And number
1, Ron Rivera.
Okay. So you and we have 3. I've got Arthur Smith and Frank Reich on mine. So McDermott, Staley, and Rivera were both in agreement on.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm really being.
We're circling deck chairs on the Titanic as far as guys are going to.
Yeah, and look, Arthur Smith sucks. Frank Reich is terrible. So I wouldn't be surprised. And really, Frank Reich.
Well, I have a retort to Frank Reich, but I'll let you go ahead.
My thing with Frank Reich, the reason why I've got him on there isn't so much because it's Carolina and the fact they're having a shitty season. It has more to do with the fact that, from everything I've heard, Dave Tepper is A, extremely meddlesome, and B, as these hedge fund billionaires are wont to be, very hands-on and very impatient.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he could have backed the wrong horse on that one. I think that what's saving him is a couple of things. Number 1, this is his first year with Carolina. And he has a reputation as being a good quarterback coach. And number 2, I mean, considering his track record, he weathered the storm with the sudden departure of Andrew Luck when he was a head coach of Indianapolis, and he had to deal with the likes of Jacoby Brissett and 39-year-old Phillip Rivers. And he did a pretty good job. And then they forced
Ryan until he got fired.
You took the words out of my mouth. Then they force-fed him Matt Ryan and said, you are going to play him, even though he was definitely not the man to play. And so he was, handed a 3-deck poker hand. And so I don't really put too much stock into his struggles in Indianapolis because a lot of the stuff was out of his control. And so I think they're going to give him at least one more year, certainly into the second year, and see if he makes any progress with the young Bryce Young, the first overall pick in the NFL draft this year. Now, if Bryce continues to struggle, then they probably will make a change. But of course, if an ownership is a la the Washington Redskins / Commanders with Dan Snyder, we've all seen what a meddlesome micromanager of an owner can do to a team. It can certainly just permeate toxicity in the entire organization, and it leads to a lack of success. And so we will see what happens. He may just throw up his hands and just quit. Who knows?
What on earth has you? I'm with you on the Matt LaFleur. I would not be surprised because that team's kind of a disaster right now, and we saw that on display on Sunday. So I would not be at all surprised. I kind of like the Matt LaFleur actually. But Mike Vrabel at number 3, that definitely I didn't see that coming.
Didn't see that. Couple of reasons. Number 1 is his performance with Will Levis. This is his second stint trying to mentor the young quarterback, and this is a defensive-minded guy, and so maybe the brass in Tennessee wants to go with somebody who's offensive-minded that can coach up the quarterback. The young quarterback, because they're giving him a second chance. And Tennessee's offense, especially with Derrick Henry, 2 years removed from a 2,100-yard season, he's just not getting it done this year. They had DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the game, and he's not getting much production. They're not getting much production.
Game.
I'm sorry?
I said he had that one good game 2 weeks ago.
He had one good game, and then that's it. He had 3 touchdowns, and that's it. I know because it was on my fantasy. But also, the second reason, and it has to do something with external forces. And that's an opportunity to maybe be the heir apparent to one Bill Belichick in New England. There's some rumors.
That makes the most sense. And I don't know how much you read Albert Breer's Monday morning quarterback column, but he does a little mailbag every week, and so I read his today, and that was what the topic du jour. Mm-hmm. Basically, kind of summarizing what you were just saying. The rumor is they love him in New England, and they would love to have him back. That being said, they also like Jared Mayo, who kind of it's 1A, 1B as far as who would be a successor to Bill Belichick. But from a Tennessee standpoint, apparently Amy Adams Strunk loves Mike Vrabel. And in fact, when they got rid of John Robinson or whoever it was, the GM they fired last year, Vrabel was actually part of the selection committee to go find the GM. Like he actually gave input and had some final say as to who the GM would be. So I don't disagree with anything you said. I just think it's one of them deals, though, too, where Tennessee, I mean, look, it goes to show, I don't care who you are, with the exception of maybe Mike Tomlin and maybe Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. And again, regular season success versus playoff success, as you know, Mike, are two totally different things. You can keep the boat afloat with mediocre quarterback play, right? Like you can keep the boat afloat, especially if you got a really good defense, or like you said, you've got a really good running back like a Derrick Henry. I think we're at the point in Tennessee where they've duct taped and baling wired this thing long enough where, you had all these pieces. You had the A.J. Brown. You had, Derrick in his prime. You had Jonnu Smith at tight end. You had a healthy Tannehill. And, now Tannehill's not starting and is beat up. I'd argue Derrick Henry's beat up. You took a flyer on a guy in DeAndre Hopkins who pretty much did it for the money. I mean, let's call it what it was. Yeah. He had other options. He wanted to get paid. I'm not mad at him for it, but at the end of the day, it's like, you had a chance to go to teams that had good quarterbacks, and you went to a run-first quarterback team with a guy that was on his last leg in Ryan Tannehill. So that tells me all I need to know about D-Hop on that end. So it'll be interesting to see. I think, to your point with Vrabel, it's one of those deals where, look, they're not going to get rid of him this year because they understand that this roster probably needs to be blown up, and I'm not sure. We need to see a little bit more of Will Levis because for as good as he looked in week one, a little bit in these last weeks. But then you can make the argument, Mike, like we just did, who the fuck are you throwing to?
Right.
Like, who's he got? So
I can't name their second receiver.
It was Treylon Burks, but he's been hurt pretty much the entire season. So
okay, there you go.
There you go.
You can't name the second receiver, at least right now. So, so that's why. I mean, Matt LaFleur. The only reason, just to expand on, I know you and I agree with it, but listen, this is his 5th year in Green Bay. He's 50-25 in the regular season so far, but first 3 years he went 13-3, and a lot of it could have.
Well, A-Rod.
Because of Aaron Rodgers, right? Now he doesn't have Aaron Rodgers. This is his 3rd year working with the young Jordan Love. We don't see any progression. As a matter of fact, we see some regression. He looked better against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, but he threw and you know what? That was a pretty good play in the end zone. That was a tough interception, but he still didn't get it done.
No, it was.
What's that?
Yeah, no, that was a tough pick, and plus it was in the guy's hands at one point.
It was in the guy's hands and was tipped out of his hands, and then it got tipped to the defensive back. So that was a tough interception, and they still had a chance to win the game, but we're still not seeing the progression, and a la Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Is it the guy or is it the system? So right now, signs point towards it's Matt LaFleur has been living off of Aaron Rodgers' coattails. So we'll see what happens. To me, I think that if they continue to spiral downwards, now granted their offensive line has been beat up. No David Bakhtiari all season long. He's not. He's not going to play. But his three of his offensive linemen are consistently questionable. So I don't know. We'll see.
Do we think any of our coaches, and like I said, you and I have three that we overlap. Do we think any of our coaches will get fired before the season's over?
Looking back at the list again,
McDermott, I say no. Staley, I say no, just because Dean Spanos is cheap, and technically they are still one game out of a playoff spot. Vrabel, no. I think Matt LaFleur, I think he's safe for now, at least through the end of the season. Ron Rivera, maybe.
Maybe Ron, because their defense is as good as he is as a quote-unquote defensive guru. They still suck defensively. They're 29th in the NFL in total points against. I still think, though, Brandon Staley is going to be on the hot seat because their defense, he's another defensive guy whose defensive team is struggling. And before that Chiefs game in the last week of the season, he could be gone. I mean, it's still a long way. We're still a long way away from the end of the season, pretty D. So I could see some move happening and them trying to get a jump start on getting a head coach. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they play. But if they continue to shit the bed and they can continue to blow leads late, Brandon Staley could find himself getting shown up door.
All right, last two things, and we'll get you guys out of here. Mentioned it a little bit at the top of the program. Real quick, we're going to see, like I said, you and I will talk a little bit more about the Chiefs, and we'll get more into the Chiefs and Philly on Sunday when we do a little pregame show on Sunday. So stay tuned for that. We'll get into a little bit, and we will get into a little bit more. But real quick, between now and Sunday, obviously, and you mentioned this already. What is the biggest thing you're concerned about with your Raiders playing the Dolphins Sunday when we're seeing, this ain't no Zach Wilson, no slapdick Danny DeVito. You've got a legit quarterback and a legit offense. We're going to find out about this Raiders offense and this Raiders team on Sunday.
Two things, and they're really related. Number one, them getting boat raced.
Okay. That game's in Miami, too. Yeah, that game's in Miami.
Yeah, and it's a 14-point spread.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's the biggest spread of the week. Secondly, and this goes into point one or question one, if they start getting boat raced, does the defense give up? Do they just start mailing it in? Colton Miller is still not practicing. Dylan Parham is not practicing. Amik Robertson, their starting cornerback, is out with a concussion. That's why they picked up Jack Jones. They picked him up off the waiver wire from New England, who was released yesterday. They picked him up today or the day before. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But I just want them to be competitive, even if they're getting blown out.
Okay. That's number one. Number two?
No, that is number one and number two. So number one is getting blown out. Number two, how they react to getting blown out. How many times will they be Rocky Balboa and continue to come off the canvas after they get knocked down?
Yeah.
Or will they just stay down and say, that's it, we're done? Because
no, I don't think they will. I
don't think so either. I just don't. That's a fear of mine that I have because we have been seeing that Raider Nation.
If that happens, if that doesn't happen and they're scrappy and it goes down to like a 27-24 or 30-27 or something like that, and we sit there and we say to ourselves, okay, that we can live with that. We knew that's what we were going to see with Antonio Pierce.
Sure.
If the opposite, if the worst case scenario happens, I'm not worried about the Raiders team because we already know kind of what that team is. What does it tell you about Antonio Pierce?
Well,
does it change your thought or your feelings about him?
No, it tells me that he still has some work to do in changing or in working the culture of that team.
Right.
And there's still some guys out there, Marcus Peters for one, okay? I still don't think that he cares. I'm going to throw it out there. Some of the plays that he made against Chicago and against Detroit, it's like, you don't even fucking care. I mean, he just whipped.
But I would argue that's always been the way he's played, though.
Well, then get rid of him.
Because
this guy's a former first-round pick. He's a former Pro Bowler. I understand that he's older, but I don't need that type of a cancer in the locker room. Okay, I mean, I don't. I want everyone to continue to put out maximum effort, even when the score shows 50-10. And if that doesn't happen, the next thing I want to see is Antonio Pierce trying to root out the bad apples.
Yeah.
And I think he will, because he's a guy that, look, this guy, he laced him up. He's a Super Bowl winner. He's a perennial Pro Bowler. He's got a lot of pelts on the wall, and he's got a lot of street cred. He bleeds silver and black. He's from Compton. He wore the Raider hats, right? Like he said in his introductory press conference, what he needs to do, and he talked about the Raider way, playing Raider football, smash mouth, throwing it deep, et cetera, et cetera. And I think they will, as long as, if they keep it close, do I expect them to win? Of course I don't expect them to win. But if they keep it close, and if they play, if they play tough to the final whistle, then God bless them. I'm already in on Antonio Pierce. What I'm not in yet is that, the roster is still severely flawed, and there are guys out there.
Your boy Champ Kelly's got his work cut out for him.
He does. There's no question about it. But keep in mind, too, he interviewed for that job, for that GM job. And luckily, he came back, and took the assistant GM job. And so I have faith in Champ Kelly. I do. Actually, when you read the stories about it, Dave Ziegler did a lot in the front office to shore up the front office, because Mike Mayock didn't do shit as a GM when it came to scouting, when it came to pro player evaluation, none of that stuff. Certainly the college scouting, it was a shell of its former of itself now. I mean, so Dave Ziegler did do a lot of that work. The problem is that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But again, if Antonio Pierce can find continue to keep the passion going, and find those guys who are not passionate and just send them down the road.
All right, last thing. Tomorrow, Cincy, Baltimore. Who you got?
T. Higgins is still out. Jamar Chase is still dealing with a back injury. Cincy's run defense is pretty good. Give me Cincy in an upset.
No, I was just scribbling your initials under the Baltimore one.
No,
fair enough. Fair enough. All right, I'm with you on that. It's must win. We forget this is a team that's been to the last two AFC Championship games and was in a Super Bowl 2 years ago. Joe Burrow's still a bad dude and did what he had to do at the end of that game last Sunday. I mean, again, you can't put the ball any better than in the receiver's hands. And again, like we said earlier, we might be having a different conversation if Tyler Boyd holds on to that football, because at that point, then the Texans have to score a touchdown versus kicking a field goal. And who knows if that, look, we know, and CJ Stroud's been phenomenal. We'll talk more about him on Sunday. But I'm with you. I'm going to go ahead and give the slight edge to Cincy, just because this is a must-win game that they have to have on Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the one, the only bit of Mike Babbo. I am still that dude, Freddie D. I don't know why, but apparently our little logos didn't show up today, but that's okay. People still know who the fuck we are. Be sure to check us out on Sunday, 10:30. We're going to do a little pregame show, little added wrinkle that Mike and I did. We did a pregame show this past Sunday and had a whole hell of a lot of fun doing it. And, it's Sunday morning, man. How good do you feel on a Sunday morning getting ready for some football? So, anywhoozy, make sure you give Mike a follow at The Bit of Mike. You can follow me at The Freddie D on both Twitter and Instagram. And the same goes for my man, Mr. Mike Babbo. For the one and only Mike Babbo, I'm still that dude, Freddie D, from H-Town, Kansas City, San Antonio, and all points in between. Check out Chief Studios. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on Sunday. Good night. God bless.
See ya.